This is an audio-only horror story. I want you to close your eyes in. 3, 2, 1, 0. Use your imagination as you listen, and use your imagination to invoke a scene. Enjoy the ride.
They say you never see it coming, the moment your life shifts from mundane to terrifying. You go about your day, oblivious to the hidden dangers lurking in the shadows, and then, out of nowhere, you feel it. That prickle on the back of your neck, the shiver that runs down your spine. That was how it started for me. My name is Emily Carson. I'm a freelance graphic designer living in a cozy one-bedroom apartment in downtown Chicago. I've always been a creature of habit, enjoying the quiet solitude of my work, my daily coffee from the little cafe across the street, and my weekly grocery trips every Saturday. Life was simple, predictable. But then, one evening, something changed. It was late when I first noticed him, around midnight on a Tuesday. I had been working late on a project, my eyes aching from hours of staring at my laptop screen. I stood up to stretch, wandering over to the window for a breath of fresh air. That's when I saw him, a figure standing under the street lamp, half hidden in shadow. I squinted, trying to make out his features, but the light was dim, and he was too far away. He was tall, wearing a dark coat that hung loosely around his frame, and his face was obscured by a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. I remember thinking it was odd for someone to be out there at that hour, just standing still, facing my building. For a moment, I considered calling out, but something about his posture, a deliberate stillness, made me stop. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just waiting for someone or passing time. But as I turned away, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me. I brushed it off and went back to work, forcing myself to forget about the stranger under the street lamp. But that uneasy feeling lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. Days passed, and I almost convinced myself that I'd imagined it. After all, I hadn't seen him again. I dove back into my work, trying to meet my deadlines, but the sleepless nights and constant anxiety were taking a toll. It was Friday night when the first knock came. I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard it. A soft, almost hesitant tap against my window. My heart skipped a beat. I sat up, disoriented, my mind struggling to process the sound. I lived on the 3rd floor. There was no balcony or fire escape near my window. Nobody should be able to reach it. I waited, listening, but the knock didn't come again. For a moment, I considered getting up to check, but fear held me in place. I tried to tell myself it was just the wind, maybe a branch tapping against the glass. Eventually, I drifted back into an uneasy sleep, but my dreams were restless, filled with shadows and the faint sound of tapping. The following morning, I found a package on my doorstep. There was no return address, just my name scrawled across the top in messy, hurried handwriting. I hesitated, staring at it for a long time before picking it up. It was light, barely weighing anything, but something about it felt wrong. I brought it inside, placing it on the kitchen counter as if it were a bomb that might go off at any moment. I debated calling the police, but what would I say? That someone left an anonymous package on my doorstep? It didn't seem like enough. Finally, I mustered up the courage to open it. Inside was a single item, a Polaroid photograph. My heart dropped as I pulled it out. It was a picture of me, taken from outside my apartment window. I was sitting on my couch, completely oblivious, my laptop open in front of me. I stared at the photo, my hands trembling. This wasn't just a random stranger anymore. This was deliberate. Someone had been watching me, close enough to capture this moment without me even knowing. Panic rose in my throat as I frantically searched my apartment, checking every window and door. But there was nothing. No sign of a break-in, no trace of anyone having been there. I called my best friend, Sarah, desperate for reassurance. She listened patiently as I recounted everything: the figure under the street lamp, the knock on the window, the photo. "You need to call the police, Em," she said, her voice firm. "This isn't normal." But I didn't call. The truth was, I felt stupid, embarrassed, like somehow I was making a big deal out of nothing. I tried to convince myself it was just some sick joke, maybe a prank by one of the kids in the building. I put the photo in a drawer trying to forget about it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Over the next few weeks, the feeling of being watched became constant. I started noticing things, small, subtle changes in my environment. The blinds in my living room would be slightly askew when I knew I had left them closed. My mail would be rearranged on the table, even though I hadn't touched it. Once I found a cigarette butt on my windowsill, even though I didn't smoke. I became paranoid, jumping at every noise, constantly looking over my shoulder. I installed new locks, bought a security camera, and even got pepper spray, but none of it made me feel safe. Every time I stepped outside, I could feel eyes on eye move, tracking. One evening, as I was walking home from the grocery store, I saw him again. He was standing across the street, half hidden behind a tree. This time, there was no mistaking it. He was watching me. I quickened my pace, my heart hammering in my chest, but I didn't dare look back. I practically ran up the stairs to my apartment, slamming the door shut behind me. I checked the security camera footage, but it was no help. Whoever he was, he knew exactly where the cameras were, staying just out of view. I spent that night curled up on my couch, too afraid to sleep. A few days later, I found the journal. It was tucked under my doormat, wrapped in plain brown paper. My name was written on the front in that same messy handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it, revealing pages filled with scribbled notes and drawings. But what sent a chill down my spine were the dates. Each entry corresponded to a specific day in my life. Monday, July 5th, she wore the blue dress, looked beautiful. Wednesday, July 7th, she didn't see me. Perfect. Friday, July 9th, knocked on the window. She heard me. The words were obsessive, every detail meticulously recorded. There were sketches of my apartment, drawings of me sitting at my desk, eating dinner, even sleeping. I felt sick, my mind reeling at the realization that this wasn't just a stranger. He knew me. He had been watching me for weeks, maybe months. I called Sarah, my voice trembling as I told her about the journal. She was furious, demanding that I go to the police immediately. But part of me was terrified. What if this made things worse? What if confronting him pushed him over the edge? Instead, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I installed more cameras inside and outside my apartment. I started documenting everything, taking photos of the package, the journal, and the notes. I was determined to catch him, to prove that I wasn't just imagining things. It happened on a Sunday night. I had gone to bed early, hoping to catch up on sleep after a week of restless nights. I was drifting off when I heard a noise, a faint creak, like a door opening. My eyes snapped open, and I lay there, heart pounding, straining to hear. There it was again, louder this time, the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the hardwood floor. My mind raced, panic flooding my veins. I reached for my phone, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I crept out of bed, my body trembling as I moved toward the door. I could hear him now, moving through the living room. I peered out, and there he was, a tall figure silhouetted against the dim light from the street lamp outside. He was rummaging through my things, his movements slow and deliberate. I snapped a photo, the flash briefly illuminating the room. He turned, and for the first time, I saw his face. It was blank, expressionless, but his eyes, those cold, piercing eyes, locked onto mine. I ran, adrenaline propelling me down the hallway. I slammed the bathroom door shut, locking it behind me. My heart pounded as I called the police, my voice frantic. I could hear him outside, his footsteps slow and deliberate, circling the apartment as if savoring every moment. It felt like hours before the police arrived, their voices muffled through the walls as they searched the apartment. When they finally opened the door, I collapsed into their arms, shaking and crying. But by then, he was gone. He had slipped away, leaving no trace behind. The police took my statement, assuring me they would increase patrols in the area. They examined the journal, the photos, and the security footage, but there wasn't much to go on. No fingerprints, no clear images, just the haunting knowledge that he was still out there, watching. I moved out of the apartment the next day, staying with Sarah until I could find a new place. I tried to go back to my old routines, but nothing felt the same. Every time I stepped outside, I felt his presence, lurking just out of sight. Months passed, and eventually the police stopped investigating. They never caught him, never found out who he was or why he had fixated on me. But I knew he was still out there, watching from the shadows. I could feel his eyes on me, even now. And every night, as I lay in bed, I would hear it. The faint sound of tapping against the window, a reminder that he was always just a breath away.
As the final echoes of the tale fade into the darkness, remember this: in the shadows where fear takes root, the true horror lies not in the creatures that lurk, but in the darkness within ourselves. We tell these stories not just to scare or entertain, but to confront the fears that we try so hard to ignore. So as you step back into the light of the real world, carry with you the lessons of the night. The monsters we create are reflections of our deepest anxieties, and the strength to overcome them is within each of us. Sleep well, and remember, in the realm of fear, we are the true masters of our fate. Good night, and may your dreams be free of shadows. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and click the notification bell for you to see my future update on this channel. Stay safe and always remember to lock your doors.